shows what people are about.
Share what's going on here in York.
It makes you feel like a family.
Local art has a face that most people can relate to.
We're a community up here that sticks together.
Art is art.
Great potential with great artists, poets, singers, writers, directors, filmmakers. It's fantastic.
Everyone has a story to tell.
That moment, you have to capture that moment and share it with the rest of the world.
Showing something that maybe has not been seen before.
Without art, it's just like
I am art. I've been art ever since I was born.
It really adds a great deal to our community.
we don't really need art to exist, but you need art to live.
Culture in Maine is important, and I think playing out is important, and playing open mics and playing wherever you can play. It's all about us all checking in with each other.
Strong, 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 strong. about your mind, so open up that door. The door opens slow, where did it go? The glow that you had before. You left it in a car, it was all oh, why would you want to go back? Just a little bit slow, just a little bit more. At the time you seemed to lie. It's in her hands, that little bag of sand. Well, why would you roll back to her? She's going around town like a rodeo clown. I guess she's the only cure. Don't get in your truck if you're having love. Well, cool, you don't drive too fast. You're full of love, forget the mortality, yeah. Time has to make that line. Cool, you don't drive too fast. Don't fast, don't fast, drive too fast. Cool, you don't drive too fast. Cool, you don't make too fast, drive too fast. Cool, you don't drive too fast. Too fast, too fast, too fast. Cool, you don't drive too fast. Too fast, too fast, too fast. Sam is an artist and she meets you on the hottest day. There's no July. She runs with a jar and a Zandy bar, spun out catching fireflies. She gets the good day if you're willing to pay anything for those eyes. She wants smart before it gets dark. She owes more than money can buy. You meet her in the place where you both know your face, but you feel something in your mind and in your heart. You find love within yourself. And in your truck if you have enough, well, hurry, don't drive too fast. Oh Lord, we got so much energy, yeah. Time is to make that last. Oh, you don't drive too fast. Oh, yeah, so fast, too fast. Oh, you don't drive too fast. Oh, you know that cocaine, I'm too fast. Oh, you don't drive too fast. Oh, you know that cocaine, I'm too fast. Oh, you don't drive too fast. Oh, you know that cocaine, I'm too fast. Lady of fast, too fast.
here with local author Teresa Rodriguez. And there's a lot more to Teresa Rodriguez than just the fact that she writes incredible educational and informational books. She also is a fabulous performance poet. She's performed in the Spoken Word Festival that the Theater of the Seventh Sister puts on out in Lancaster. She's been a featured artist up at Burke's Bards, and she's a regular participant there. She's featured down here in York, and she is also a classically trained vocalist who does vocal lessons through Goggleworks, which is a great Reading institution, and has performed, sang, and pretty much done just about everything cultural all across the entire region over the last several years. But she has a really special project that's very dear to her heart and very close to my mission, if you've seen several of the shows that we've had on it here on the station. This book that is getting ready to come out is Warning Signs of Abuse. Get out early and stay free forever. Now, having done so many other projects and working in different fields, I mean, you do classical poetry and sonnets and songs and write your own music, and then also do, beautiful poetry about everything from spirituality to life and love. What made you decide to make that return back to informative, creative nonfiction and to do this particular book?
The irony of it was that I've written many, many poems for many, many people in my life. Never for my abuser. I don't call him my ex-husband. I call him my abuser, and I say that because I don't feel we had a marriage. It was a deformity. It was an anomaly thing. It wasn't real. I felt like I needed to. I guess after having finally gotten out of the situation, I needed to look back on it and say, what were those signs? What were there any? First of all, were there warning signs that I could have taken to get myself out of that situation years and years and years ago? And if there were, what are they? And how can I make this into a book that would actually help someone else avoid the fate that I allowed myself to get into? It's very, very easy to judge someone who's involved in an abusive situation, say, well, she's an idiot. Why does she stay with him? Right. Why does she do that? It's so intensely complex, and the web, I call it more like a vortex. It sucks you in and sucks you under so deep and so hard that I'm urging every woman that can pick this book up to read those warning signs, because if you read them and if you acknowledge them in your own life, you can say, I need to get away from this thing now. I'm saying, don't wait another year. Don't wait 6 months. Go now, away. Get away from him. Get completely away.
And does that seem to be one of the characteristics of abuse that you've observed in your experience or in the work that you've done with advocacy, that women maybe don't know that they're even in an abusive relationship?
A lot of times they're in denial about it, and that's what I was too. Because these signs had happened to me before. I had already been physically and emotionally abused before I got married. And yet I chose to marry this man. And you have to get a good hard look at yourself and say, why would I do that? Why would any intelligent woman? I have a section in the book called Smart Women, Foolish Choices. It really doesn't have anything to do with your socioeconomic background, your race, your religion, or any of these things. Any woman. And I'm dealing with the heterosexual relationships here, male, female. Any woman could get caught in this trap. And that's what I'm saying. And yet I, being an educated woman and a woman who has, strong sensitivities, got sucked in.
And I think that really is one of the preconceptions that, if you are educated, it doesn't happen to you. If you're wealthy, it doesn't happen to you. If you're Caucasian, it doesn't happen to you.
Oh, good Lord, no.
And the idea that how many women, because it's not supposed to happen to them, or they're embarrassed about even having made that bad choice, then continue to stay or cover it up or try to fix it because they don't want to admit that they got into a situation that they're not able to handle.
It's very easy to cover it, and it's easy to downplay, and I did that. I did that definitely in the beginning when people were saying to me, you shouldn't marry him. And then I went through this supposed, time of therapy or whatever, and we came out of it, and I said, everything's just fine. We're getting married. Now you can come to the wedding. But there were still such horrible problems. And I had to take a really hard look at my own life. Why did I allow myself? Why was I more inclined to be a victim of an abusive relationship than some other woman. Not that I think any woman could be, but why was I so particularly vulnerable? And in my case, because I had been abused as a child, I think I already was. That's one of the reasons, and I do list that among many. I was sort of, in a sense, psychologically pre-programmed to feel those same feelings again, to experience that same kind of relationship, that same kind of treatment.
And I know statistically that is very common, that abusers tend to gravitate toward people that are more vulnerable.
Exactly.
And that people that once you have been abused, you are much more likely to fall into that trap in the future. So you have to really guard against it and
yes,
do
you have
the
to guard
work.
against it. And
you have to do that work to build up your self-esteem to where you can say, I deserve better.
I do mention that. I really do, Carla, because I feel like a man who is an abuser is a certain type of person, and I list what some of the characteristics of my impressions of what I've seen and researched about this. And it may not sound very nice, but it's a predatory versus prey relationship. For some reason, these people are narcissists with a great deal of need for control. Some of them are sociopaths, some of them are psychopaths. You can have psychopaths on Wall Street. I mean, they're not just people that hack people up and hide them under their floorboards.
Right.
There could be anybody, but it's a type of man who, for whatever reason, thrives off of the, as I call, the energy or the life of the female, and because his own identity is made up of what he can get out of her and do to her and take from her and make her. And I experienced all of that too.
So what actually gave you the impetus to move forward and step out and then begin the work and research to create this book for other women?
I had been divorced for 2 years, and I stayed with him because I was, it looked like I was going in another direction with someone else, and it didn't happen. So I was kind of stuck. And my children were still younger than they are now. And as a mother, I had 6 children. So, you could say, why did you do that? I was in a very, very plain religious community for many years. And I did believe in having large families. I felt that was a gift from God. And every child, and I still do believe every one of my children is a blessing. But with that came great burdens for me. And so it took me longer. That was one of the reasons why it took me longer to get out of the situation than some other women. But some women would get out of it before they keep reproducing with somebody who's an evil abuser. So hopefully this will help someone avoid that. But I think that when I was finally away and he was incarcerated for unrelated issues, I said, I had in the course of 21 years, I had 7 PFAs, protections from abuse, in Pennsylvania, called PFA orders. One I had before we got married, and yet I still rescinded that one, married him, got another one, separated, rescinded that one, got away, separated, blah, 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 over and over again. And I will give a shout out to Ellie Sarno from Burke's Women in Crisis, who told me when I went in for, I think it was my 6th or 7th PFA, she said, Teresa, it often takes 7 times, 7 attempts to get fully free when you're embedded as I was. And so one of my subtitles in one of the chapters is 7 times the charm. And for me, it really was 7. I took that opportunity because in one part of the book, I call it like the do not look at that man behind the curtain, the little wizard who emanates this false power. And that's what I was sucked up and deluded by, the false power that he was telling me if I left him, he would disappear and I would never get any child support, that he would take the children away and hide them. I'd never see them again. Things like this. What frightens a woman who has young children, hear this person say these things to you. And I didn't have as many women probably could have gotten out of it sooner than I did, because they had better family support, of which I had little on both sides of the situation. And I don't think that the church has necessarily had the resources necessary to help someone as deeply needy as I was at the time. I think some situations would be easier to deal with. I think mine was exceptionally difficult for everybody that I went to for help. But at the very end, he was out of my life because he was in a jail. And so finally I said, this is it. I'm finally going. This is going to be done. And so that I got the final PFA, and is now a final one. And I have nothing to do with him. We do not speak. And I only hope for his sake that he can become the best father that he can be to his children and his grandchildren, grandfather to his grandchildren. But I felt like this had been such a huge part of my life, and sort of not a secret, but something I reluctantly would talk about, because I tried to be, a professional in what I was doing. But who wants to hear that you really had this hard thing going on in your life? And now I felt like, in a sense, I was outing myself as I've outed myself about other things. I just felt like it was necessary. Why hide anymore this when I can probably help someone with the information that I'm telling you? I said, I saw these warning signs back in 1988. I was, one of the first ones, and I'm just going to give it away. When is a man cursing at you that says he loves you, and you get this? The first time that happened to me, it shocked me into a standstill, because that was what sometimes it's called like a learned in action. You get, well, you didn't know what to do. So it's like the reaction can either be the fight or flight, where you feel like you want to leave, you get defensive, and you're on edge all the time, which is why I developed a myriad of health problems, exacerbated by my own mental illness problems to the point of not being able to function at all for 5 years. And then also that sort of learned helplessness, where you don't know what to do because you're afraid to make any move at all because it might make it worse. And a lot of women who are caught, particularly when it gets violent, I'm talking physically violent and sexually oppressive, if not violent, are going to just sit there, and just let it go, let it happen, because it's better than possibly being hurt again. It's better than possibly him coming through on the threats that he makes. You can get sucked in with these threats. Your mind gets twisted. You believe the lies. You believe them as truth. It's very hard. As intelligent as I am, I believed everything he said. I also believed when he looked at me straight in the eyes and said, I never did drugs in the 20 years that we were married at that point. And it turned out to be probably the biggest lie of them all, because that's what he went to jail for, was severe drug abuse. And I didn't see it till the very, very end, when he started leaving things around the house that were objects of that sort of thing. That drove me out of my mind with my children and all. And there was, I think for some women, and in my case too, I struggled between a rock and a hard place. What was going to be worse for my children? Not having their father at all, or having this horribly dysfunctional life that they grew up in. And I'll have to tell you the truth, I should have chosen them, not having their father at all. I'm sorry. I made a terrible mistake, because they're still struggling with all kinds of, I call it the overtones, the aftermath, the echoes of what they grew up hearing him put me down. They still don't know how to talk to me in a proper way. Most of my children still struggle with that. And I don't blame them entirely. So, it has repercussions way down the road. It would have been far better if I had been a little bit more courageous earlier on, and taken the steps and not listen to the lies that there wouldn't be money for me. It turned out that there wasn't money for me. When I finally got away, and this was after I had stayed at a shelter. This is after I had done PFAs. This is after I had left and gotten my own house, my own apartment. He had gotten his own place. Over and over again, we had done this. There was a period where I hardly had any money, but you know what? I lived through it, and it was okay. And if that's a fear that a woman has, it's okay. You will get through the other side of it. I promise you'll get through the other side of it. The most difficult situation for women who are particularly in abusive, I have a whole chapter on the Nicole Brown Simpson and O.J. Simpson situation, and I related a lot to her, because she's only a few years older than I was. And she married a man who had abused her before she married him. She had children with this man. She stayed with him. And she divorced and tried to start her own life. The difference is she's dead and I'm here. And the situation in which women will most likely get hurt or killed is when they're trying to leave. So it's serious. It's a serious situation. I lay it out and say, you have to honestly say, maybe I have to stay. And people on the outside who are judging that are going to have to say, she might not have another choice at this point. Because you don't know how violent that man is when no one's around. You know, I could go into a public situation and he'd be, praise God, hallelujah, you know, and everybody would think he was this great, you know, religious Christian guy, and had just gotten done cursing me out and calling me horrible names in the car on the way. And I would sit there and just not know how to piece it together in my mind. And I guess I always thought, well, as long as we're out publicly, he acts a little better towards me than he does in private. And that's what I'm trying to tell you, is that a man like this can be to people, and he can be an excellent public persona of a charming, affable, you know, likable guy. And behind those doors, he is going to be evil and hurt you. And then you have to try to figure out how to explain that to your kids and your community who may not understand. So
for women that are struggling to figure out some of those words and that dialogue, how to share the story, how to admit it to themselves,
I think you need to talk about it. And I put that in very clearly. Do not pretend. You can't. You have to talk about it. You have to talk about it, and you have to talk about it freely so that you can. The more I talked about it, the clearer I said, "Oh, that this really is as bad as it is." You know, I
made it more real.
It does make it real, and you need to talk to somebody. You know, and I've said you can talk to anybody. Talk to a minister. Talk to a counselor. Talk to a friend. Talk to your mother. Talk to your sisters. Anybody. You might have a harder time with certain family members, because I still have family members who don't believe. I was never punched in my boob. I was never kicked in my vagina. I was never forced into sex. You know, nobody believes. There's some people that don't believe that because they can't. It's difficult to accept that.
It can be hard to hear. But,
hard to hear too.
And now, so people that are interested, they can get copies of this book, downloadable for Kindle.
On Kindle only.
They can get it at Amazon. Just go to Amazon.com.
You can pre-order it now. The book will be available May 1st.
So people can go to Amazon.com and just type in Warning Signs of Abuse.
It's there. Top
Teresa
of the page.
Rodriguez.
Yep.
And they can also go to your website for more information.
Bardsinger.com. B-A-R-D. Like the bard is a poet, Bard Singer, because I do all that. The reason why I created it, I thought about creating it as an actual book, but for now anyway, I don't see, except to put it in a shelter or somewhere where the abuser is not, to have it an actual book with the cover that says, Warning Signs of Abuse, get out early and stay free forever. The guy could beat you up for that. You know, you could get into a lot of trouble. You don't want to put that book in your house. So you would want to read it. If you can put it on a Kindle, have it on a computer, read it at the library, goes to somewhere you can click it off quickly, make sure hopefully he doesn't have your passwords. I want it to be a tool that you can use, but you have to be smart about how you're going to use it. You don't want to get into I don't want anybody to get in trouble because I wrote this book. I'm writing it to try really earnestly to try to help women see the warning signs. If you see them, even as early as the first week, get away from this man. Go and run. Run hard, run fast, and don't look back. I can't be more serious about it. Any one of the warning signs that I put out. And if you look at this and go, oh, well, yeah, I guess he's kind of like that. Well, you're in denial, honey. He is that way, and you do not want to spend your life with that. You don't want to do this to yourself. The web of abuse. It is that spark of vulnerability. There is something that allows for the connection to happen, the meeting of the emotional stars. It may seem so satisfying and curious at first, but it is more than anything you have ever had before, and maybe in some ways it is better. The intensity of it, the rush, the speed, the love talk, the love act. Doesn't it all happen so fast? Within the speed is the dangerous whirl, that spinning vortex that before you can climb out of it, you have begun to be sucked into it. It happens when you are so caught in the moment of the thrill and the chase that you do not see the vortex that is turning, and you yourself are turning and turning. But what was it that drew you in? That spot, that place of vulnerability, that area in the heart that likes being flattered and charmed and made to feel that beautiful and important or valuable. And before the vortex is done swirling you around and whirling you into a powder, the other things are entering in. The intensity of the vortex begins to have dark chakras. The energy goes sideways. The shock value begins to shock. Am I different now that he is in my life? Did I do something wrong here? Is he in just a bad mood? Why do I get this feeling of foreboding? Why does this weird sense of fear come over me? Of course, is it just that this is so new and real and intense and wonderful? But why do I feel afraid somehow? And why does part of me want to get away? That vortex entraps because of the speed at which it develops and the less powerful nature of the object which gets caught within the whirl and the swirl. The speed is a device, and it can be a tool in the arsenal of the dominator seeking prey to dominate. Beware, oh deer in the headlights, for those pretty lights aiming into your eyes is the vortex coming to suck you in as you stare back unawares. And so it starts this way. Within the whirl and swirl is some kind of pain, some kind of shock. You feel the nausea combined with dread. Maybe I can't go on these kinds of rides. Maybe I'm not cut out for them. Maybe I should try something else. Or sit this one out a while. For a moment, it slows. And the nice energy returns. And the blues and whites of the princess and her long hair are dancing before your feet again and before your vision eyes again. Perhaps I will get used to the speed of it. After all, I just need some practice. Perhaps I caused the vortex to swing so hard around. I will go into the purple colors and swirl again. Purple is the color of rich blood vessels when they are broken. But oh, so pretty. Indeed, a color it is, isn't it? The vortex is a wheel, not the up and down of a Ferris wheel, but a sucking, circling kind of wheel that spins and ignites the energy that is in it. And that energy is you. Without you, the vortex would seek another energy, and with you, it becomes more alive, and it swirls faster, and you feel the swirl, and it is fast and exciting and a bit nauseating and a bit scary. In some ways, it is better than the damp green grass of ordinary and the fields of buttercups and daisies. And yet the vortex shocks you once more, and then a little more of your energy is taken from you. You feel the depletion, and yet you seem to stay. But then should I get off? Can I get out? By the time you think about it, the vortex has begun to embed itself into your legs and body, and you are embedded into it as well. Those colors of purple and yellow and red, fire and bruised blood. And as you try to rid yourself of this vortex ride, behold, the sweet sorries come again. You hear the melodious strains of remorse, which sound as real as all the lute songs and trumpets in fairyland. Mark me, the purples will come again, against the fiery reds and yellows, the colors of anger and heat, and the conversion of your energy into the vortex. And those purples will crack open to show the red from which they are truly made. Again and again and again and again and again. The man in the middle of the vortex is the vortex itself, who both creates it and sustains himself by keeping you in it.
Without you, the Force would starve and grow angry. Then the Force will cajole you back to itself with charms and potions that appeal to your heart. The thing that has grown from the two of you together is greater than the sum of your two parts. And without you, upon which to feed and glean, the vortex will rise in greater fury to encapsulate you so that you cannot wrench your shoulder or move your legs to run away. The fairyland was in the vortex, was it not? That dragon was not me or him, was it? You then belong to it. Do you accept this new identity? Do you think if you remain, all will be goodness and nice energies again? Do you? I know all these feelings and these realities because I experienced them all. The whirlwind beginning, the state of vulnerability, the intensity of the momentum so early on, getting onto a ride that was going so fast, I did not realize how far I was getting from the old world of normal until I was so enmeshed in it that I found it hard to get away. My mind had already been altered to think differently. My ears had been acclimated to hearing the cursings and the put-downs. And eventually, when the purple bruises came, I somehow thought I deserved them, and that I made them happen somehow. And then when the red roses of repentance came in a bundle, I would relent and return again. Eventually I returned, even when there were no roses or any more sorries said to me anymore. But as the day rises and the moon cycles through her phases, the cycle will continue and worsen until you can heed the warning signs and get away and stay away. The warning signs were all there for me, and no, I did not heed them. I spent half my life stuck and sucked in by the vortex. But even though it took me a long time, I really did do it, and I really am finally free. This is the future I want you to have, and I want you to have it sooner than I had it. Warning Signs of Abuse was written as a gift from my heart. Learn from me, from where I went wrong and what I did right, so you have a chance to avoid my fate. Get out early so you can stay free, but heed the warning signs of abuse.
They say everything can be replaced. Every distance is not near. Still I remember every face of every man who put me here. I see my light come shining be released. Woo! Yeah! They say every man needs protection. They say every man must fall. Still I swear I see my reflection somewhere so high above the wall. I see my light come shining from the west down to the east. Any day now, anyway now, I shall be released. I see my light come shining from the west down to the east. Any day now, anyway now, I shall be released. Thanks, everyone. Appalachian Gypsy Tribe in the house.
Thank you,
On a
brother.
Wednesday in York.
Now, York's art scene is famous for people that are really bold, creative, and resourceful and use unconventional materials and styles to create art that wouldn't necessarily leap to mind when one says, hey, this is what you can do with a canvas. And Terry Iacovelli is doing some really exciting things with some very unconventional combinations of medium that are jumping off the walls all across the York area and beyond the region. She's got some exciting shows coming up and some really cool artwork that she brought to share today. So I wanted to take the time to find out a little bit about the process that's going on and where you can check it out, coming soon to an unconventional venue near you. Okay, so you have a sort of the signature style that you're working with right now is actually involving wax?
Yes.
Like, explain this process to me of how we incorporate wax into a fine art painting that's going on the wall. Because I'm like, I see it and I'm like, that's amazing. But then I'm trying to figure out how you got there and I'm not. I'm lost.
Okay. Okay, encaustic wax is actually a hot wax process that it's oil paint mixed with beeswax and then Damar resin. So I actually set up a pancake griddle and then also a hot pan that has the wax in it as well.
Danger, Will Robinson.
And then you fuse it with a blowtorch.
Good Lord.
Yeah. So it's
this is
really
not This is not for the beginner.
No, you can't drink wine and blowtorch and paint. You know.
This is not a wine and paint night.
No, this is not a wine and paint thing. But it's really exciting because you can control the wax, you can stamp into the wax, you can do more traditional things like draw into the wax and rub oil paint into it. You can get very realistic effects. You can get abstract effects. You can experiment and mix things into it to get textural surfaces, so it's pretty exciting. You can really do a lot of different things with it.
The combination of mediums, I understand. Okay, so we have the oil, which brings us the color and which brings us the sort of the carrier for these things, and then the wax gives the texture and shape and almost three-dimensional feel. What does the resin do?
That hardens the wax so that it stays permanent, and then the painting actually cures over time, and it will get harder and harder and almost enamel-like.
So does it develop like a sheen?
Yeah, and you can also change how shiny or matte you want the wax by the formula that you use to create it. So when I want it to be really shiny, I add carnauba flakes, which is car wax, and then other times you can keep it really matte. And then it'll set up over time, and it'll be permanent. It won't rot, it won't fade, it just stays permanent.
And is there a reason why you have to use the beeswax, or can you use other kinds of wax?
Just because of the makeup of the wax. Like you can't use paraffin wax, it's too brittle. The beeswax, I guess, being more of a natural material, lasts better.
It's more pliable during the shaping process,
Yes.
but then hardens to a nice solid. So when you're working with creating it, what are some of the ways that you're able to make pictures in wax? Because even imagining, you're pouring hot wax and then pouring hot wax on the canvas or on the surface, and then being able to shape and control that into something that you want. I mean, you can't just use a traditional paintbrush and say, I want it to look this way. How do you force the shapes to come out of this liquid wax medium?
Well, you can use a paintbrush, and you use natural hair brushes. You can't use synthetic brushes, but you can get realistic effects. I just had a self-portrait that I had at Market View that was more like a Fauve style, but more realistic. And then other times you can, since you fuse each layer with a blowtorch, you can fuse it lightly so it stays exactly how you put it, or you can blend it down so it melts and makes effects into the other wax that's established. Also, with doing that, you can do an underpainting and then put a wax on top and then kind of blast through the top layer to what's underneath. So it's really whatever you want to do with it.
So what is the origin from this style? Like, is this something that you developed from seeing other people do similar things and you had to trial and error your way through exactly how to make this process happen? Or does it have like a different cultural origin for people that have never heard of encaustic wax before?
This is what the ancient Greeks did. They're Fayum mummy portraits that are thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of years old. And so that shows us how permanent it is. It'll just stay. And so I read about it. I've seen it. I've always been interested in the textural quality when I've seen other people's encaustic wax. So I have been a traditional oil painter, so I decided to take a class in encaustic wax. And now I'm just sort of experimenting through on my own, trying different things.
So where did the evolution start? You said you have worked in other mediums and other fields. What was sort of the evolution of the art journey to get to this point?
Well, I went to art school and have teaching certification, and I've taught art K to 12 and at the college level. And so I get excited about getting people interested in art. And I always think that an artist is experimenting and trying new things. And so this was something exciting for me to try, and it just really worked for me because I really like mixed media. I've done things with tempera and watercolor together. I've done things with tempera, watercolor, colored pencil, and just kind of played a little bit with materials. I'm pretty comfortable with that. And I've done some hand building with clay. So combining the carving into the wax and stamping into the wax is sort of like working with clay. And then the traditional painting aspect of it comes from my background with painting. So when I could put the two together, I was really excited about making art this way.
Now, and some of the shows, I mean, this has been, it's not just a, oh, well, you know, I figured I would try something new. I mean, the response has been huge. Tell me about some of the shows that you've just completed and some of the ones that you have coming up.
I've had some group shows in different places, and I had a show at Market View Arts. I've had, yeah, it's a really nice space.
That is a beautiful gallery
beautiful
space.
Building. And I have some things. I'm going to have a show at Watchmaker's Daughter this month for April, and then this summer at Blue Moon in the restaurant. And so it's nice to get things out in the community, and the community response has been great.
Now, this is very interesting to me because I'm seeing a lot more of this around York, the idea of putting art into unconventional spaces as opposed to traditional gallery spaces. I see it more in restaurants, in stores, in schools, even in office buildings and community centers. Do you think that that gets more exposure to the art? I mean, it seems almost like as an artist, I would freak out more about like my art being in a greasy restaurant with the open mic night or something like that.
I think that just shows the collaboration between all of the businesses and all of the artists. We support each other here. I've shown my work in different places, and sometimes it can be competitive between artists. But what I like about York County is we're rooting for each other. We've got each other's backs, you know, like we want to see each other succeed, and we know that the way to do that is to do it together. So I've had immense support from my artist friends who, you know, show me their work and pass my work along, and you know, we share ideas, and it's been great.
So what are some of the other experiments that you have either tried that maybe worked or didn't work, or what are some of the next things you would love to get to incorporate and learn more of?
I've been working a little bit larger scale with the encaustic, which is somewhat challenging because things land in the wax, or you know, get bubbles in your wax. But I've been using non-traditional things into the wax. Someone gave me some stained glass, and I was painting with the encaustic, and I thought, I wonder if this will stick. So I threw it in there, and then I couldn't get it off. So I thought, okay, that's going to stick.
It's in.
It's in
there we go.
And I like the dimensional quality and the reflective quality that it added to some of the works, and so I used it. I did a whole series of my garden. I'm a gardener and I love flowers, and so as things came up in my yard, I just started painting them. And I was painting an oak leaf hydrangea, which is really seedy in the center, and I just couldn't get it small enough with the wax. So I thought, well, I'll throw some couscous in here and see how that works. And so I did that, and it worked out. So
I love it.
Now I'm trying string and some tissue paper like that to build up elements of it. So I'm really trying some textural treatments with the surface to see what I can get out of it.
Wow. And the heat doesn't, you're able to use different medium with that. It cools enough that it's not, we're not frying the couscous.
No, you just have to be careful not to set any papers on fire when you're working. You know, make sure you completely dip it in the wax and then put it on the painting.
So now, how long have you been involved with the York art scene? You said you have been to a lot of other places. What's sort of the difference? Like, how did you end up here, and what's kind of the difference between here and the market and the taste and what people are looking for and like in other places?
I had some things in Lancaster County, which is great, but they really like traditional work a lot of times. That was just my experience. It's a very nice community. I went to Pennsylvania College of Art and Design when I was younger, so I was very familiar with that area. I just see a difference in York with how supportive we are to each other. It's refreshing that we want to see each other succeed. Like I said, you know, it's great to have a group of artists you can talk to and critique work with and get together collaboratively.
I love it. Well, I cannot wait to get to see you in April and throughout the summer. And if people want to know more about your art, they want to see more, maybe even purchase more, where can they go to?
I have an Etsy store on Etsy.com. I also have a website. And for Go Green in the City, I'm going to be demonstrating outside of the Watchmaker's Daughter the process with my blowtorch and the oil and the wax. And people can come and see what it looks like.
Sounds amazing. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
I got a sugar-coated girl. sleep alone every night. I got a sugar-coated girl, she'll never be all mine. I got a sugar-coated girl, still I'm lonely all inside. She never ever done me wrong, but she never do me right. I got a sugar-coated girl, I sleep alone every night.
Excited about this. I love the atmosphere, and I just want to know more about it.
I see it evolving, changing, growing, and I like it.
It's fleeting. Once it happens, once a song comes out, once a poem comes out, it'll never come out the same.
Some of the culture in Maine is documenting what's going on in a way that will have that lasting staying power.
It just breeds healthy growth. It's a necessity. It's a necessity, yes.